Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it's I, the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, the Master of Fun and Wonder, the existential Mr. Rogers, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here. Oh, here's Gilbert, too. Gilbert wants you to know that he, too, well, he's the canine existential Mr. Rogers. He constantly lives in the land of make-believe. Anyway, I just wanted to point out that this is Robservations, the show about something number 249. 249 Robservations. I can't believe that Gilbert waited till I went online before he decided to bother me. As everyone knows, he's a conniving canine. He wants me to give him cookies on screen. And who am I to say no? Since it's a new day, it's another day, another dollar. And he's already yawning. At least pretend, at least feign entertainment. Okay, there you go. I see. Look, he is. I mean, is this guy an actor or what? He's an actor. Here, you get a third cookie, and that's what you get. And now your sister gets cookies. You get 3 is it, buddy. That's it. That's all you get. No, you don't get more. Tallulah gets cookies. Down, buddy. Come on, buddy. Good boy, buddy. Give me a kiss, baby. Come on. Down, buddy. Thank you. And you too. Okay, there you go. Gilbert and Tallulah, I'm telling you, like all performers, as the show goes on, they just get more and more powerful as you go on. Anyway, this is the 249th episode of Robservations. Kind of snuck up on me. 250 shows tomorrow. I mean, my God. I don't even know what to say to that. You all know that these shows are brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's Grooming Products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And if you want to go to their website at getluckytiger.com, by buying any of their great products, when you check out, you can punch in PGS for this community, for Post-Geek Singularity, and you get 20% off your order. And again, I haven't said it in a couple of days, but I do love their facial scrub, and I do love their all-over body wash. It truly is delightful, and I'm a big fan of their products. By the way, I did drop on the Burnettwork the latest episode of Living the Lucky Tiger Life, where James Hills from the mantripping.com blog takes us to Loreto, Mexico, in the Baja Peninsula on the Sea of Cortez. So check that out. It's delightful. And I want to thank James for taking videos and giving pictures and all that. So, Netflix. I want to talk about Netflix today. Big day to talk about Netflix. First of all, a lot of stuff, both good and bad, is bandied about Netflix. And we've watched Netflix go from a mail order service that would provide physical discs. Apparently, you can still get them. I would not know. You can still get DVDs. And some people, people that don't necessarily have great internet connection. There's a lot of people that live in the wilds, people. There's a lot of, if you're outside of urban environments in America, you don't always have the best cell phone coverage or the best internet capability. So Netflix is still providing a service to those people who want to use physical media to watch films. And I think that's great. I think it's terrific. But there's all this contention now. People are like, is Netflix ruining the theatrical experience? Last year, I'm going to talk about this a little later, they had Roma. They gave that a theatrical experience, a release. The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's upcoming, the most expensive movie Netflix has ever made, in upwards close to $200 million, I've actually heard, is going to get a limited theatrical release starting November 1st. I want to go see it in the theater. It's 3.5 hours long, an amazing epic, but Netflix financed it. No other studios would finance that film, and they went ahead and financed it. And regardless, first of all, let me just clear some air here. Anybody that's talking about boycotting The Irishman or not watching it because of Martin Scorsese's words about Marvel, respectfully, I say this. Please know, you're an idiot. Don't do that. Don't deprive yourself of seeing a movie by one of our masters simply because his opinion about Marvel movies does not stop you from watching Marvel movies. It does not stop you from collecting Marvel movies. It does not stop you from loving them, nor does it stop you from dropping $500 on that amazing 4K box set of all of the MCU movies. Now, as an aside, I was a little disappointed. Like I might have, in my younger days, I would have cleared the decks, and I absolutely would have bought that Infinity War Saga box set. But it doesn't come with any 3D versions. And I understand why. They're trying to phase 3D out, especially in the United States. But I have to tell you, I own every Marvel Cinematic Universe movie in 4K, and I have all of the 3D counterparts, those that were released in 3D. The only two movies I do not own in 4K are Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron. I have all of the other MCU movies in 4K. So, it makes me sad that I'm not going to spend $500 on that set, because I want that set and I want that extra disc. But the real question is, being middle-aged with one foot in my grave, how long do I have left on this planet to truly enjoy that set? So be that as it may. Total aside, back to Netflix. I'm a fan. First of all, let me just say something that I don't think we bag on Netflix a lot about. We don't know what is on Netflix. They don't really tell us. They're getting better. They every week they announce something that allows you to know what one or two things that are new to Netflix are, and that's cool. But I have to say that Elizabeth and I have been enjoying an 8-episode French horror miniseries called Marianne. I guess if I spoke French, I'd say Marianne, but I would say Marianne, like the professor and Gilligan and Marianne. It's called Marianne, but it's not Marianne. It's Marianne, like one word. So I guess you get to go a ya, like Marianne or something. I don't know. I don't speak French, but that's what it's called. It's 8 episodes. It is delightful. It's funny. It's quirky. It's weird. It's horrific. It's violent. Many people die. It's very, very scary. And if you haven't seen it, you should. Now, I didn't even know this thing existed. Never heard about it. The American genre press has all but ignored this. Maybe they Dread Central was or Bloody Disgusting, or somebody was covering this. I didn't hear about it. I saw, I think, a fleeting Facebook post about somebody talking about watching Marianne and how good it was. So I'm like, Elizabeth, let's check this out. She speaks French. So we started watching it. 20 minutes in, you're hooked. Let me just tell you. It's quite a fun ride. It will remind you of everything from Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell to one of James Wan's Conjuring or Insidious movies. Or it's just a delightfully fun time. And I got to tell you, my new favorite subgenre of Euro entertainment is anything that takes place in a sleepy seaside community, whether it's Broadchurch, which I loved, or this. Which takes place in a French town with a lighthouse. I desperately want to live in a town with a lighthouse. Maybe I'll move to Newfoundland or something like that. I want to live with a lighthouse that every night there's light just sweeping across where I'm living, preferably in my bedroom. So if you're awake in the middle of the night, it just is scary no matter what. I would love that. That would be great. I want to live with there's, like in Clockwork Orange. I want to marry a lighthouse keeper. It'll keep me company. That I do. I don't know any lighthouse keepers, and if I did know them, I probably wouldn't want to marry them, because I can't imagine there'd be a woman lighthouse keeper, and she wouldn't be Elizabeth anyway. But it'd be cool to live in a lighthouse. Maybe I can ask Stevie Wayne from KAB Antonio Bay. Anyway, that's an aside too. But the fact is, Netflix is putting out all kinds of stuff from all over the world that we might never get a chance to see. And it's something, I think their foreign fare is undervalued. A lot of people don't think about looking up what they've got, but there's a lot of crazy series. There's from Europe, from India. There's a lot of from Asia. There's some great stuff. Kingdom, the Korean period zombie series. I mean, there's great stuff on Netflix if you look for it. And Train to Busan, I remember seeing on Netflix for the first time. Then I had to go back and get that Blu-ray, because boy, is Train to Busan good. But so Netflix is kind of killing it. They're bringing some great stuff to audiences all over the world that might not be able to see these things. And once you go down the foreign horror series rabbit hole, there's a lot there. Of course, Dark, which I haven't quite got to, the German two-season series. I think maybe I'll jump into that next. People have talked to me about that science fiction and time travel, and it's very worth seeing. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But the real question is now, what is streaming services now that we're a month away, less than a month away, we're half a month away. Today's say the 14th or 15th. Today is the 15th. We're days away. No, we're a couple weeks away from the launch of Apple. By the way, Apple Plus just renewed Ron Moore's sci-fi alternate history series For All Mankind. They've renewed it for season 2 before its debut. So kudos to Ron Moore. Kudos to Mike Okuda. Kudos to anybody who's working on that show. It looks cool to me. Anything about the space program, I will watch. So that is very exciting. Of course, we are 3 weeks away from The Mandalorian. As I said, my loins are burning, and not with anything bad, but with the blood circulating with excitement to see The Mandalorian. It's beginning my Star Wars fever. I can feel it rise up. I'm gonna have to bust out my Randy Cooper Star Destroyer, my 3-foot Star Destroyer model that's downstairs in the basement, and finally build it. Elizabeth is dubious that this will ever happen, but I think it would be kind of fun to just whip it out. It's not like the lighting is a pain in the ass, and it is made of resin. But still, maybe I could just build a little bit of it on the show. But it is exciting. And so anyway, Netflix has been grappling with, are they going to put stuff out in the theater? Now, they did put Roma out in the theater. I want to read a little bit about that. But there are no, if you go to Box Office Mojo and you look for any box office information about Roma and how it did theatrically, there isn't any. There's no box office information on Box Office Mojo. So we don't know how much Netflix made. Now, from an independent film standpoint, let me, since you all know that I've been producing Tango Shalom, which by the way is we're back into the sound mix, finishing up the pre-mix for Reel 2, thank God, because we lost our sound mixer. He had to go work on another paid gig. But so here's the thing. If you're an independent filmmaker, right, and you made a really decent indie, if I do say so myself, what a streaming service allows you to do. Now, a lot of people will tell you, oh, Netflix, they don't pay anything for a lot of these independent movies, and that's true. But if you have a film that has a certain level of, I think, competence to it, I mean, call me naive, but let's just say I would call a serious independent low-budget movie, something that is far, far less than, say, $4 million. A streaming service what they do for you is if they buy your film, they can alleviate, you can pay back your investors. You have a venue where it will be seen forever, and you don't have to worry about marketing costs. You don't have to worry about a lame distribution. I mean, I went through that 20 years ago when Free Enterprise came out in theaters. It was picked up by a company, Regent Entertainment, and it was their first acquisition, their first real acquisition, and they put it in 9 theaters in Los Angeles with no advertising budget, kind of like what Netflix does now. But what happens is that when no one knows your movie is there, they don't know to go to the theaters to see it. There were no trailers in theaters, and it died a very quick death in the movie theaters, and that was along with my directing career. So what happens with the streaming services when they pick up your film and they put it out there, look, whether they promote it or whether you promote it, it can pay back your investors. You know, you're not going to necessarily make a ton of money if your film is a theatrical hit, but in the indie film world today, it's very, very, very difficult to make money theatrically. Very, very difficult. So as evidenced by, you look at all these movies like Booksmart, and they did okay, pretty good, but they're not, they end up being disappointments. But our movie, because it's so low budget, that if we could sell it to a streaming service, that's a huge win for us because we can get our investors paid back. Are we going to get rich? No, we're not going to get rich. And that's okay. I think everybody who was involved with Tango Shalom knew that was probably not the case because, as I like to call it, people say, what genre is Tango Shalom? I say it is an indie Jewish spiritual quest family dance comedy fable. And most people smile when I say that, but those films, you can't exactly point to them and go, well, there's a genre that's burning up the box office charts. Look, I think we made a delightful movie, but if a Netflix picked it up and paid us reasonably decent money, everybody comes out all right, and the movie gets seen. It has a venue that you can always go to and see it. It's out there for people to see, and they will be watching it forever. And that's what, when you make a movie, that's what you want. You want a film to have an audience, as opposed to, say, another movie that dies a quick death at the box office and has been literally out of print. You can only see an old standard def version of it from 1999. That's not my preferred version, but that's my first movie. That's all you can see. So Netflix does offer interesting alternatives for filmmakers, and certainly allowing us, such as to see things like Marianne, this great French horror series in the month of October, that is wonderful. Now, there's an article that came out today, and now I'm now looking for the article, and this was on IndieWire. And now here it is. This was today. This came out 2 hours ago, this article, and Zach Sharf wrote it. And this comes on IndieWire. Edward Norton says, Spielberg is wrong. Netflix isn't destroying movies. Theaters are. Edward Norton is calling out movie theater chains ahead of the theatrical release of his upcoming Warner Brothers drama, Motherless Brooklyn. In a new interview with the Daily Beast, Norton tells reporter Nick Schrager that it's the theater chains that are destroying the theatrical experience. Period. Full stop. No one else. Norton calls on moviegoers to be vocal about ensuring movie theaters are running projection and sound at top quality, because in most cases around the country, they are not. A lot of filmmakers and cinematographers that I know have really started to look into this, say that more than 60% of American theaters are running their projectors at almost half the luminosity that they're required to by contract. They are delivering, Norton says, they are delivering crappy sound and a dim picture, and no one is calling them out on it. Norton continued, if movie theaters were delivering what they're supposed to be delivering, people would be going, wow, this is amazing. I do not get this at home. Well, I want people to literally walk into their theater and find the manager and say, if this looks dark, you're giving me my money back, because I'm paying. And at the ArcLight, that's our theaters here in LA, at the ArcLight, I'm paying a premium for a premium experience. Norton said he personally witnessed movie theaters' bad quality when he went to a test screening of Motherless Brooklyn in a theater that was screening Captain Marvel. The filmmaker told the Daily Beast that 14 is the quality control spec the Marvel film should be running at, but the theater was running the movie at a 6.2 spec. That means it was literally running at less than half the light that was supposed to be on there, Norton said. You want to train people, like, go get your money back. If the movie looks dark, and it was, go get your money back. I think we should rally around that. I really do. Norton's criticism of movie theaters came after his defense of Netflix. Norton said he disagreed with Steven Spielberg's headline-making comments that Netflix poses a danger to the theatrical experience. Spielberg even argued that Netflix movies should qualify for Emmys and not Oscars. Norton said that Netflix is doing more to preserve the theatrical experience than movie theater chains themselves. If I disagreed with anybody, with great respect, it was Steven Spielberg, Norton said. Netflix invested more in Roma theatrically than any boutique label at any studio would have, by a factor of 5. They put a Spanish language, black and white film all over the world in theaters. Hundreds of theaters, not just a few, as many as Sony Pictures Classics would have done. They put more money behind it in the theatrical context than anybody else would have. You can't tell me there's a whole lot of people making black and white Spanish language films and putting that investment behind them. Norton added, there is a lot going on because of Netflix and what it was the vanguard of. That represents an unprecedented period of ripe opportunity for many more types of stories and voices to be heard and told and celebrated. It's incredible what is going on. Motherless Brooklyn is opening nationwide November 2nd from Warner Brothers. Well, Michael B. Jordan, Adonis Creed himself, Killmonger, he has produced a TV show called Raising Dion that is a superhero show. I haven't yet watched it. It's on Netflix. I mean, I think Ed Norton is absolutely right. Now, here's the thing. I'm an iconoclast, Spielberg, Scorsese, everybody who grew up going to the movie theater. Like I would go see since I was, I don't know, since I was 12 years old, I would go see all of the big movies that opened on a weekend. I was very big. I mean, I can't do it as much now, but I would see everything. And I would see everything opening weekend. I wanted to see it with a crowd. There is nothing better than seeing a great film projected on a screen, in a theater with incredible sound, with optimal production or projection, and sitting there with a theater full, a room full of like-minded people that are just as excited as you are to be there. The movie-going experience is absolutely enhanced, 100%. There's no doubt. The bigger the screen, the bigger the sound system. When we went and saw Joker, Elizabeth she hadn't seen a movie at a Dolby theater before, and she was like, "This is my favorite. This is my favorite theater." The Dolby theaters at the AMC chain are they're optimized for the best picture and sound. They look incredible. I go to the Chinese theater on Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, now it's like a tourist attraction. Some of the best picture and sound I've ever seen. Seeing Blade Runner 2049 in there was an unbelievable experience. It's laser projection. If you go see 3D, especially 3D IMAX, it's incredible because the projection is optimized. And for smaller theater chains, the reason that you dim the bulbs is bulbs on projectors are expensive. They obviously last a lot longer if you don't burn them as bright. And most people, when they're going into theaters, they don't know the difference. They don't know the difference. Well, you saw a lot of this with 3D. Part of the reason 3D didn't catch on was how dim it was. You've got to make sure you have the brightness levels properly calibrated. When I went and saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at the Cinerama Dome, my beloved Cinerama Dome, they did not have it bright enough because they weren't used to projecting film. And it was clearly, I mean, anybody watching it could clearly see that the image was way, way too dim. Now, it's depressing when that happens, but Ed Norton is correct. One of the things that's really ruining the movie theater experience is a lack of quality on the part of the theater chains, the theater owners. We're lucky in Los Angeles. We have the ArcLight cinemas, but you know what? Like as evidence with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I've seen movies here in the Pasadena ArcLight that simply were too dark. Their bulbs were too dim. And you know what? I think anybody, it doesn't matter whether you're aware of it or not, you are aware of a great movie-going experience when you come out of the theater. If you see a film with great projection and great sound, it is self-evident. You know. You might not be an expert in it, but you certainly know. Now, I went in and I wanted to look into the history of Netflix, and there's a Los Angeles Times article that was written by Ryan Foggener and Josh Rottenberg on December 3rd, 2018, specifically about Roma. And I just want to read a little bit about this. Alfonso Cuarón's critically acclaimed Roma, an intimate black and white Spanish language feature about a middle-class Mexican family and their live-in nanny, seems an unlikely candidate for the role of Hollywood disruptor. Nevertheless, the $15 million award contender, which Netflix Incorporated released in a handful of theaters just before Thanksgiving, has become a flashpoint in the contentious debate over the future of film distribution. Roma was released in theaters 3 weeks before it becomes available on Netflix subscribers December 14th, an unprecedented move for a company that has traditionally eschewed the idea of releasing movies in theaters before they are available to subscribers on its streaming platform. Facing rising competition from the Walt Disney Company and other media giants entering the streaming business, Netflix is increasingly eager to lure filmmakers who want their movies to be shown on the big screen and get awards recognition. Awards pundits widely predict that Roma will earn the Los Gatos California Company its first Best Picture Oscar nomination, a triumph for a company that craves the same credibility in the movie business that it has achieved in television, having become a fixture in the top Emmy races with such shows as House of Cards and The Crown. But Netflix's new distribution strategy is facing heavy opposition. Many cinema chains are refusing to screen Roma, saying it sets a bad precedent. It's a battle that has pitted the exhibitors that built Hollywood against the powerful streaming giant that has radically disrupted its conventions. The dispute revolves around the long-standing practice of releasing movies in ordered phases called windows. Traditionally, studios have waited 90 days after a movie opens in theaters before making it available for home viewing. Exhibitors argue that shortening the exclusive window from 3 months to 3 weeks devalues the theatrical experience and discourages people from leaving their homes to watch movies. Let it be said that, as we talked about on the John Campea show, AMC just announced their own streaming service today. That's right, people. AMC Theaters is now starting their own streaming service where you can rent and buy brand new movies. Now, Variety reported on this. Don't have yet all the details. I'm of two minds about it, but I won't get into it on this show because I'm talking about Netflix. They're still outsiders and they're still not part of our industry at this point, said Phil Zaccaretti, chief executive of the Knoxville, Tennessee-based cinema chain Phoenix Theaters Entertainment. Every exhibitor should fight it. We should work with them, but work with them on terms of what's acceptable to the exhibition community. Netflix has been trying to walk a tightrope between its own competing interests, stirring internal tensions over how much to conform or upend traditional cinema industry practices. Chief Content Officer Ted Sarandos for Netflix has long railed against the idea of windows as antiquated. He has insisted on releasing movies to streaming subscribers and in theaters simultaneously, arguing that doing so gives consumers more choice. We are not pro-theater. We are not anti-theater. We are pro-consumer, he said at a May investors conference in New York. He reiterated that theme at an investors conference Monday, saying, "We're trying to connect people with movies in a big, meaningful way." Here's my thoughts about it. Movies were designed to be experienced in a communal fashion. When the home video industry took off in the late 70s and early 80s, suddenly consumers were able to get movies where before you either would go see them at a theater, wait till they were revived and sent out into theaters again years later, or you could, with home video, suddenly start watching movies or wait till they were on television, which could happen. Who knows? I mean, Wizard of Oz played once a year on CBS. We knew that every generation could watch Wizard of Oz once a year, but with home video, suddenly you could program your own film festival. And back in the day, everybody, including Steven Spielberg, back in the early 80s, I remember him saying famously that to see all of the blood, sweat, and tears he poured into making Close Encounters to be put into a cassette that could fit in the palm of your hand was a little disconcerting. That's not exactly what he said. He probably didn't use the word disconcerting, but the idea was there. To see Close Encounters reduced to a cassette tape bothered him. Now he's still, the theatrical experience is going away. Well, here's the thing. As we all know, we're in a constant state of evolution. Every industry, the coal industry, fossil fuel industry, manufacturing, we are all undergoing, because of the revolution in whether it's robotics, whether it's in communications technology, the internet, whatever. We are going through, as human civilization has always gone through, we are going through ever more rapid periods of evolutionary change. We're making evolutionary leaps, and they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Nothing will change, however. Nothing will change human beings, at least until we become not proto-human, post-human. When we're all half Borg or whatever. Until that happens, we like seeing things and doing things in a communal experience. How much fun is it to ride a roller coaster by yourself? It's not. It's fun, But it's much better if you're in the front car and everybody behind you is screaming their damn fool heads off as you go through a loop-de-loop. Isn't it better? Things are better with more people. You don't like to go to a bar that's empty. I don't like to go to movie theaters that are empty. Although sometimes in the middle of the day, to be quite honest, it can be kind of fun. But not when you're seeing a big epic blockbuster. Not when you go to opening night. You want to hear the audience. You want to hear their response. You want to hear the laughter, the cheers, the crying when Tony Stark, bit the big one. Spoiler alert. I mean, you want to see that with other people. It's more fun. Everything is more fun. Communal experiences like that. It's the same thing. Would you want to go to a football game if you're the only person sitting in the stadium and you watched your favorite team win the Super Bowl? I mean, sure, it'd be cool to see your favorite team win the Super Bowl, but if you did that by yourself, it's not as much fun as if you're in a theater or a stadium full of tens of thousands of people cheering on the Jedi Knight, the Jedi Master of the Pacific Northwest, Russell Wilson, as he doesn't throw a pick and scores a touchdown to win another Super Bowl, which he's probably going to do this year, let's face it. But so the idea that the theatrical experience would ever go away is distressing to me. And I am all about that, Steve. I've never met Steven Spielberg, but he's been a hero of mine since I saw Jaws in 1975 when I was 8. And I still think that it's amazing to go to the movie theaters with people. And I don't want that to go away. I do want to see The Irishman in a theater. Now it's going to play the Egyptian Theater at the American Cinematheque. It's going to play, and what's great about it is Elizabeth and I can jump on a train, go right into Hollywood, walk across the street, and go see The Irishman, and we'll be so hungry for Italian food we can go across the street to Michelli's and have Chianti, and I know it's called The Irishman. Maybe we should have bangers and mash or something, but I prefer Italian food, and I'm sure there's going to be other Italians. Isn't Robert De Niro just The Irishman? Anyway, I'm off the weeds, but no one wants the theatrical experience to go away. But from a filmmaking perspective, Netflix, I mean, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs gave the Coen brothers, they got to make their anthology Western. Who would have made that if not Netflix? And Netflix is, as long as they, I mean, I do think their business model, they've been bending the rules a little bit in terms of how much they're spending and borrowing. And we'll see if it all works out. Ultimately, I hope it does, because they've provided many different voices a venue to share their ideas, filmmakers of all types from all over the world. And we're seeing their wares on Netflix. And that is a good thing. I think that is ultimately a very good thing. Now, I don't want the theatrical experience to go away. And I think that I think that if Netflix is going to do that with a movie like The Irishman, remember, it's not cheap putting movies in movie theaters, especially if Netflix is not going to spend money for P&A. It's not like whatever they do theatrically. Here's the problem. You might want to open The Irishman in, say, 1,000 theaters nationally, which is not a big release, right? But if you're going to do that, you have to spend money on marketing. And as we all know, Netflix they barely market the programs they're dropping on their own streaming service. So when they release The Irishman in theaters, they're not spending any money to market it, which means they're not expecting to make any money from the theatrical release. They're just doing that because Martin Scorsese made the movie for them. And they know that to keep Marty happy, it's got to have a limited theatrical. But who's going to go out and see it theatrically? I'm going to, because he's one of the masters. And you can't not see The Irishman theatrically. I also want to see what the de-aging VFX look like on the big screen. But, ultimately, I don't think Netflix is not a villain. They're not bad. None of these streaming services are bad. What they're going to do is the Disney streaming service is going to make, if I want to go back and I want to watch anything from the Disney catalog that I wouldn't ever normally say watch, like an old Davy Crockett episode from the 50s, or, just watch the Mickey Mouse Club, just wondering, what was Annette Funicello looking like when she was 13? If I ever thought about something like that, because, I just watched Stand By Me and there's that Annette Funicello joke. Well, were they right about that? You can do that. although I don't think the Mickey Mouse Club is on the Disney streaming service because they've had so many rights issues with it. So never mind. I guess I'll never know what Annette Funicello looked like after watching Stand By Me again. But it's just important, I think, that we are getting this material that's going to be out there. It's going to be accessible for all to see. And I don't think that we are in any danger, especially when AMC is not only are they having their own streaming service, but they're building theaters in conjunction with Dolby to give you that optimal theater experience. And, AMC is showing football games on Sunday afternoons in their theaters. We need that kind of innovation. I have not yet done that, but what a cool thing to do. I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun, and why not? We have more and more Fathom events. I just saw the trailer for the Galaxy Quest documentary that Fathom is going to put out. Again, anything to get people to come into theaters. Elizabeth and I went and saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Of course, Fathom Events just had the Deep Space Nine documentary. They showed Alien for its 40th anniversary this past weekend. There's all kinds of things they could do to get people, make the theatrical experience important again. I think there's nothing wrong with that. It can only be a good thing. Now, I've got letters to read. I got stuff people are talking about here. Let's see what you guys have to say. Mark C. is here. Mike Chure is here. Mark C. says, Viggo Mortensen starred in the foreign film Captain Alatriste, the Spanish Musketeer. Finding a copy of this is very expensive. Have you seen it? And is it worth the continued fight to own? I have never seen it. I will say this. I was able to work with Viggo Mortensen in the first movie I ever worked on, which was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He was in it. Delightful man. I believe he was still married to Exene Cervenka, his ex-wife, who is also the lead singer of the Los Angeles punk band X. But I've never seen that film. Wow. Mark C. says, the AMC near my home ran a screening of Wonder Woman with a dim bulb. I asked for my money back and was given an I'm sorry and told to file my complaint with the AMC website. See, this is what theaters should not be doing. The problem is, look, most of the people who work at movie theaters, remember, they're being paid minimum wage, and a lot of people are not educated about this. And unfortunately, there are no more union projectionists at movie theaters the way there used to be. And so when you go and you try and explain the problem, the people that you're going to be talking to are not going to know. What I really think all theaters should do, especially multiplexes, is you should have a customer service desk that has somebody working at the customer service desk that knows something about quality control. And again, this is something, the only way that companies are going to be aware of this is if you do either write to them, send emails to them, or, go to social media, talk about it, tag AMC. If you have substandard projection at a movie theater movie theaters have one job for you, the consumer, to show movies in the best possible, literally the best possible light. And if they're not doing that, complain. Go to Yelp, maybe not Yelp, but go to Twitter, go to social media. You can tag AMC. Somebody's looking at that. And if that's a consistent problem, name the theater. Name the theater. Name the wherever that AMC is. And that's the only way things get done. Because you know what? They'll, like every other business, if you can get away with it and save some money, they will. If you're not getting great food and you're not getting great projection, if you're not getting good popcorn, and I mean, isn't it a bummer to go to a movie theater and buy popcorn that isn't warm? I mean, come on. You'd think that would be their first priority. Make sure you get warm popcorn. If the communal movie-going experience is to be preserved in this day and age, you have to complain. So, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like. It would, again, my gums would bleed and I would want to scoop my eyeballs out with my Diet Coke straw if I was watching a movie like Wonder Woman and the bulbs were dim. It would really bother. It would really bother me. Joshua Levesque says, Rob, you're the man, and thanks for being your sweaty self. I changed my avatar on Twitter today because, in the month of October, everybody changes their name. If, I guess it's an LA thing. I don't know, to celebrate the season. And Robert Meyer Burnett never lends itself really to a Halloween kind of a theme. But I thought about it. I was thinking RMB. So I changed my Twitter avatar. For those of you who know your 50s sci-fi, I am now Robot Monster Burnett on Twitter. And Robot Monster is a movie that the monster in the movie is literally a guy in an ape suit wearing an astronaut or an alien's space helmet on his head. And they made a whole movie called Robot Monsters. Some people might say that's horrifically awful. I say that's producing. But I am Robot Monster Burnett and my avatar photo, my Avi photo was changed to the actual Robot Monster. And Joshua said, dude, what is up with changing your avatar? And I said, hey, I'm Robot Monster Burnett until the end of October. So there you go. So Joshua, thanks for supporting the channel. And it's always good to converse with you on whatever part of social media we converse with each other. Paul Gilmore says, outside of Dolby, AMC now refuses to even play movies in the correct aspect ratio. Instead, a 235:1 movie looks like it's on my TV letterboxed, or a 185 movie is half the screen instead of filling the screen. Paul, let me just tell you, I don't live in a country yet where there's still garbage pickup. There's still stoplights that work. So I can complain living in America about these things. And if they showed a movie in the wrong aspect ratio in a movie theater that I was in, I'd become Che Guevara and I would lead the revolution. I would make my fellow moviegoers rise up in solidarity. Lech Walesa, whatever. There would be an uprising in the theater. We would march to the projection booth and figure out what button we needed to hit to fix it. There is no excuse for that. That is desecration of the highest order. And I had to live with that with pan and scan in my younger days. But since letterboxing came about and now we can watch anamorphic widescreen in all of its beauty, if you go to a movie theater and they're showing it in the wrong aspect ratio, really, as I like to say on the Schmodown, you just Burnett it all down. Burnett it all down. You tell people I told you to do that. Actually, probably don't. I'm not going to, you know what? If somebody says, Rob Burnett said to burn this theater down if the aspect ratio wasn't proper, I'll deny that I'm saying that right now. But better you go to social media and complain. Actual violence in movie theaters, not a good thing. I'm not a proponent of it. I don't want movie theaters burned down because I want to go back and see proper projection and the proper luminance, the levels in the theaters. So, and by the way, it's your duty as citizens. We have to make sure the movie-going experience is preserved, by God. Alexander Wilson is here. Alexander Wilson says, theaters, overpriced tickets, food, and bad customer service, dirty seats, bad sound, and bad lighting. Some places have awful speakers. Man, look, I grew up, there were theaters in Seattle that I would go to. I would call them soda stick theaters. I did not make up that word. Soda stick is what happens when so many sodas have been spilled in your local grindhouse that the entire floor is sticky. Soda stick. And I would expect some of these, $2 movie theaters where the cockroaches can literally survive just licking the floor. There's so much soda stick. I would expect bad speakers. But in this day and age, there is no excuse for bad projection or bad sound. No excuse. And Alexander Wilson is correct. And so is Edward Norton. That is what's killing the theatrical experience. Bad presentation. Bad presentation sucks. And by the way, you know what? Yes, there are starving children in the world. Yes, there is injustice everywhere. Yes, there are marginalized people. Yes, what's going on in Syria sucks. And I'll tell you, the exploitation of people all over the world is a horrible, awful thing. Well, at this particular moment, there's nothing I can do about that. But what I can do is rail against bad movie theater projection. Because you know what? One of the things that makes life worth living, once everybody is equal and safe from war and has no hunger in their bellies, the ultimate privilege is being able to experience art. Go to art museums, go to symphonies, concerts, movies. Art is the ultimate. I mean, that's why human life is worth living, because of art. Once we're not worrying about getting eaten by predators or getting killed by enemies or starving to death or dying of some horrible plague, we get to enjoy our lives. We get to create things. We get to dream, and we get to wonder, about our place in the universe, and we can argue whether we're Democrats or Republicans. All of that is a luxury, and we should demand our luxury items are good. I mean, we fought this hard to get where we're at. Why not preserve it? You know, I don't want somebody telling me that I should just accept whatever projection I'm going to get and like it. No. No, no, no. You must demand you have the best projection, the best picture, and the best sound. That is what civilization is all about. So really, by complaining about this, you are helping all of humanity. At least that's how I look at it, damn it. Willow Yang is here. Hello, Willow. Willow Yang, I'm telling you, she's in all my life, I don't think I've said a girl's name more than Willow Yang's that I don't even know. If she walked up and stood right in front of me, I would not know. Even if she said, "Hey, man, how's it going?" I would not know it's her. I usually can place voices even if I hadn't heard their voice in 10 years. No idea. No idea. Willow Yang says, I hate Cineplex, the only chain in Vancouver. They keep on forcing people to see things in 3D and run a bunch of ads, not trailers, before movies. Yeah, that's lame. I remember when Cineplex in the 80s took over some of our theater chains. I think it was General Cinemas got taken over. And General Cinemas had that cool, they had the cool like movie projector icon, and they'd have that piece of music. Remember that? Man, I love that. And then Grand Cinemas General Cinemas took it over. Man, I miss those days. Complain. You know what? Cineplex is a Canadian company, and the fact that they're screwing over the Canadians is especially first generation immigrant Canadians. They're doing you a disservice, Willow. You know, I mean, terrible, terrible, terrible. And for somebody who's such a fan and it is so insightful as you deserve better, my dear. Demand your rights as a moviegoer. I don't know how, but you should do it. Alexander Wilson says, also, overpriced theater alcohol. Georgetown AMC in DC is trying to charge $20 a drink for mediocre liquor. It starts to burn a hole in your pocket. $20 for a drink? That's highway robbery. I mean, that's top, unless you're getting top shelf hooch. I mean, it doesn't even cost $20 for a double Jameson Rocks at the ArcLight. That's terrible. I mean, you know, and in Georgetown, you've got the Exorcist steps. You have a part of movie history. They should be celebrating that, but it is, after all, AMC, so perhaps not so good. But yeah, the movie theater experience, like Ed Norton said, movie theaters are cutting their own throat. They're being short-sighted. They have one job. JB Bonifacio is here. JB says, how do you reconcile the trend that more and more people wait for digital home release? I don't blame them because it's expensive to watch a lot of movies. Well, JB, there you go. I mean, that's what it is. There's parking. There's the cost of refreshment. I mean, I look at it this way. The ArcLight, which is a premium theater chain here in LA, and there are in other cities as well. I don't mind paying for the ArcLight because I like the experience of going there. Same with the Dolby Theater, the AMC at the Burbank 16. The Dolby Cinemas cost more money. I don't mind that. I don't mind paying for that. But, you know, a lot of people, especially if you have kids, if you think about movie prices, you take a family of 4 to the movies. I mean, you're looking at like $60 to $80 for a big city movie. I mean, that's a lot of money if you're a family of 4. And then the kids, I mean, I don't know anybody who wants to go to the movie theater and not get some refreshment. I mean, even the act of getting refreshments at the movie theater, it's ritualistic to me. Like if I was a churchgoer, I would want to eat communion and I would want to, you know, drink out of that goblet because that's part of the experience. That's what you're there for. You're going to church to eat the body of Christ and to drink the blood of Christ too, right? I mean, if you don't get to do that, why go to church? And I feel like when you go to a movie theater, I want popcorn. I also want peanut M&Ms, and mixing popcorn and chocolate with salt. It's the greatest thing in the world. It's part of the whole ritualistic thing of it all, you know? And that's why people are waiting at home. And by the way, you know, back to this Martin Scorsese debate about Marvel movies and Jennifer Aniston trying to stay relevant by, drumming up support for her new show that's going to debut on November 1st, the morning show, which I think looks pretty good. Um, uh, it's expensive. I mean, the movie-going experience, the reason why movies like the Marvel movies or the Fast and the Furious movies or Pixar movies, because you go as a family, you want an experience, you want a spectacle, you want to feel like you've been taken somewhere. When you watch a giant movie on a big screen, and it is a Pixar film where you're going to feel something like one of my great regrets in life will be to not have seen Coco on a big screen for the first time. I saw it in our bedroom where my big screen is. Elizabeth and I watched Coco together, and we were both like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I would love to have seen it. I didn't go see it. I wish I could have seen it on a big screen because it's so good. And you really feel like when you see a movie like Coco that you've been transported somewhere, you've had an experience, and when it's over, you feel like you're a changed human being. But I feel like movies like that, this is something they're not talking about when Martin Scorsese just talks about, oh, I don't like Marvel movies. Marvel movies do provide an experience. Whether you love them or not, I between Infinity War and Endgame, yes, you have to be predisposed to liking Marvel movies. I mean, obviously, you have to like superhero movies. I'm surrounded by superhero media all my whole life. I have been. And I love superhero movies, and I never thought a day would come where I would be able to watch an Infinity War followed up by an Endgame in the movie theaters. And so to me, seeing this epic fantasy, and that's what it is. I mean, let's face it, you can call it superhero movies, but they're fantasy films. I mean, they have different trappings, but just like Lord of the Rings, I mean, is there a more satisfying movie-going experience than all three Lord of the Rings movies? Which, by the way, I saw at the Cinerama Dome before Return of the King opened. They showed the theatrical versions of Fellowship, Two Towers, and then they showed they showed the extended versions of Fellowship and Two Towers, and then they showed the opening of Return of the King. I don't think I've ever been more satisfied in any movie-going experience than seeing all three Lord of the Rings movies in the Cinerama Dome one afternoon. I mean, it was amazing. And you feel like you went somewhere for real. I went to Middle-earth. I stood my ground against the Witch King of Agmar. I mean, that's the way it is, man. And that's what people want from the movies. And I think the reason people are waiting for, look, I want to see Booksmart. I haven't seen Booksmart yet. I'm going to see it when it's available on streaming. I didn't see Fourth Grade. I watched Fourth Grade. And I found that movie quite affecting, actually. It was like, oh, man. But, we did roll out and we saw Lady Bird. I liked Lady Bird. I felt that was a great theatrical experience. I really liked that movie a lot. That's why I'm looking forward to Greta Gerwig's follow-up, Little Women. I'll go see that in the theater. Elizabeth, I'm sure, will dig it. And now Elizabeth's she's in film classes. Elizabeth is editing her second film as I'm talking to you right now. And now she wants to stop shows when we're watching them. And she asks me, we watched the pilot of The Blacklist last night. She's like, how many cameras did they shoot this scene with? A monster is being created before me. It's amazing. But also it's kind of exciting and endearing because I can go back and show her all these things and go, look at this, look at this, look at this. But anyway, I don't want to get out in the weeds too far, but the reason people aren't going, it's too expensive. And our movies, you got to make movies that are worth going to see. And I don't think necessarily like the Shawshank Redemption, which I saw the very first screening I could get into at the Motion Picture Academy before it opened. That was an experience. That was my favorite. I've talked about it. One of my favorite novellas ever. I read it every year for the holidays. And then seeing that movie in 94, that was an experience. You feel at the end you're changed by seeing it. That's what people want from the movies. And people will roll out, and when they have great projection and great sound, that's halfway to getting to be to having experience. I think it's important. Phi Wen is here. Phi Wen says, though I agree that films like The Irishman should be seen in theaters, isn't it ultimately the story that matters the most? I'd rather someone watch Godfather on their phone than not at all. Hashtag pan and scan sucks. Okay. In theory, I agree with you. I would rather have somebody watch a movie on their phone than not see it at all. But I will say this. If you are watching a film on your phone, you're not getting the full experience. You know, those movies, even The Godfather, that is not necessarily an action film, it is meant to be seen big on the screen. The shot choices were made, the artistry, the authorship was done because people knew that they would be seeing these movies on a big screen. They were going to be larger than life. They were meant to be larger than life. They were photographed to be seen on a big screen, on a big canvas. And that's, if you're seeing a movie, watching Apocalypse Now on a small screen on your phone, you're not really seeing Apocalypse Now. If you go into a theater and you see Apocalypse Now at the Dome, which I have multiple times, you will have an experience. You'll walk out of that movie. If you've never seen Apocalypse Now and you can see it in a theater, or if you can have, I mean, now, 4K projection, you can have a 120 or 150 inch screen in your house, 4K projection, and watch Apocalypse Now. If you've got an 11.1 Atmos sound system in your house, you can have that same experience. If you're watching something big enough with the proper sound, especially Apocalypse Now, my God, you will experience, it'll change your life. And you can't have that. The story isn't the only thing about movies, because if that's all you're watching, what you're losing is the art of cinema itself. Because that's why streaming, I mean, look, when I'm watching Ozark or something, I'm all caught up in the story. I'm less aware of the artistry going on. Not to say that there isn't a lot of artistry, because there is. There's a lot of artistry going on. But when you're watching something like Apocalypse Now that was made for the cinema, made to be seen on a big screen, I'll tell you, a Star Wars movie is never better than when you're watching it in a theater. It's never better. On a thunderous sound system, on a big screen where it's just you're being enveloped by the image. That's the way to see it, man. And it's just not the same. And I know I sound like an old man, get off my lawn, but it's true. It's true. Got letters. I can't believe it's an hour into the show, and I'm just now getting to Emil Johansson's letter. Emil Johansson has a good letter. Emil Johansson is a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. He is an imagination connoisseur. He's very loquacious in the live chats, and he writes good letters. And here's another one. Hello, Rob. This letter is about why I believe makers of fiction have the right to be a bit more liberal with their politics. Uh-oh, Emil. A bit more liberal with their politics expressed through their work. This is not necessarily just about movies. I'm talking fiction in general. Now, I'm going to be as clear as I can on my thought process. I've seen reviews of Joker calling it left-wing populism, an anthem for incels, and macho right-wing culture in the same review. I don't think that makes sense, but my point is, people are taking the Joker very politically, but I don't think Todd Phillips intended to do something that political, and I think that's okay. I think people take for granted that art should be political, that it should have a nice, cute message that makes you feel good, as well as telling you something important about life. Even dark movies like Schindler's List raise awareness of the Holocaust, ended with a colorful message, a colorful image, which did get criticized because the reality was that the Jewish people who survived the Holocaust didn't get a happy ending anyway. They had to return to homes that weren't theirs anymore, and some even ended up in gulags, etc. But that movie ended nicely, and that's my point. It falls into the category of trying to make people aware of something horrible, and yet at the same time sending a positive message. The Holocaust was bad, but there were people who did good things. And that's fine. However, with the Joker, we never got that. It stands out that way, and maybe that's why people don't want it to get an award and that it shouldn't even be made. I can understand that a little bit, for example. What if a movie came out that was brilliantly made but promoted Nazism? I don't know if it would be okay with it being recognized as a good movie, so even I can be biased. I don't know if I would be okay with it being recognized as a good movie, so even I can be biased that way. But I don't think Joker is that extreme, to be honest. I think in the end, the Joker kept it real. They gave the villain a logical backstory. It doesn't mean all bad people are justified in those actions. It just means that in this case, it made sense for Arthur to be a bad person, which obviously doesn't give you a good moral lesson. It doesn't end on a happy note, but it actually makes sense. Since it's not trying to make sense out of all life, it's not trying to come up with a positive spin at the end, people are left empty. But it's not a political movie, in my opinion. It's pure escapism. You can lose yourself in the movie and not worry about what is right or wrong, just about what is real and what is fake. And the irony, I think, is that because the movie isn't trying to be cute and cuddly, it becomes way more realistic than movies that do. A lot of Jewish people never had a happy, colorful ending. Sometimes in life, the bad guy does get away. 12-year-olds have their cell phones robbed. Things like that don't end well. The bad guys are never bullied into some ironic justice. However, it's real and you can't escape it. And because this movie is not trying to send awareness of a horrible tragedy or end it with a nice bow, it actually reflects our society a lot more, because a lot of people at least feel like things do not make sense, like the bad guy isn't bullied into submission as if it's a Batman cartoon. A lot of people, I believe, feel like the bad guy gets away. And because they can see a movie where the bad guy never learns his lesson or whatever, the movie speaks to them way more than a movie would if it were a happy ending. Thanks for reading my letter. I might be assuming too much, but I just wanted an interesting take. I like movies like The Joker or A Taxi Driver, even if they can seem controversial. They can be interesting to watch, and that doesn't mean you support evil, because it's not about that. It's escapism. And so I think people have the right to do works of fiction that do not have happy endings. Emil Johansson. Well, Emil, you know what? I think you're right for the most part. Look, most people, I would say, you go to the movies to have a good time. One of my favorite movies of all time, and I talk about it all the time, is A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange is about a rapist murderer, irredeemably bad. He's a bad, bad guy. He's the ultimate anti-hero. And yet you begin to like him as you follow his story. Because, and this is what I think is one of the great things about Clockwork Orange. First of all, A Clockwork Orange is an incredibly political movie. And it's an incredibly political movie. And at the end of the movie has something very, at least in my mind, controversial to say, which is, it is better to have the free will to choose to do bad, to choose to do evil, than if you have free will stripped away from you, that you lose the ability to choose. You lose your humanity in a misbegotten attempt to turn society good. And I think that is a very, very controversial subject. And the movie makes you believe in the fact that it is better that Alex DeLarge remains a sociopath, a violent sociopath who very possibly could be very dangerous or not, but it's better that he has the ability to choose to do those things than to have free will taken away from him. And I think that's that's a whole college philosophy quarter or a semester. You could be debating this issue. And it's an incredibly political one. And I do think, look, you can go and look at The Joker as escapism, but I have to say, The Joker is a political film because it is disparaging the one percenters. It is talking about healthcare and mental illness and how does our society, Los Angeles has between 60 and 80,000 homeless people on the streets. I've watched it happen over the last 5 years, and people are losing their homes. They're losing the will to live, and it's choking our cities. All of the West Coast cities, Seattle, Portland, San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco have mentally ill people on the streets. They're not being taken care of. So I think The Joker does have a lot of political messages in it if you choose to look for them. They're definitely there. Or because it's the origin of a Batman villain, you could look at it as the origin of a Batman villain and not see anything. It's like I keep saying, it's like what Luke Skywalker did in the cave on Dagobah. Yoda says to Luke, Luke asks, what do I take with me? Or what's in there? What's in there? And Yoda says, only what you take with you. And I think that's true of movies. People, it depends how you choose to look at films, how you want to look at films. I mean, I think there's a lot of things now that multiversity or whatever, there's that website that looks for diversity in movies. The Joker got an F. Well, if that's your criteria and you're just looking for diversity in film, you're going to miss what the actual movie is about, which is sort of sad. In all of our lives, depending on where you are and what you do, if you go out with your friends, whoever you're hanging out with, does your group of friends represent the racial makeup of everyone, say, in America? I know you're not in America. No. So this idea that every story that we have to tell has to have absolute diversity is ludicrous. And it doesn't mean that it's making a political statement. It just doesn't. But like you point out, you can watch movies and enjoy them for their escapist elements and not be hit over the head by some kind of political treatise. And that's okay too. Because remember, sometimes you just want to be entertained. And there's nothing wrong with that. Magic K says Kevin Feige stepped up to be the CCO of Marvel. Now, for those of you who don't know, because it's breaking news today, Kevin Feige, our Lord and Savior of the comic book motion picture, was just promoted to Chief Creative Officer at Marvel, which means all of Marvel Entertainment, television, comics, movies, everything falls under his purview. He controls it all, baby. He's become the god of Marvel. He's become, dare I say it, an eternal, maybe a celestial, however you want to call it. He's there, man. And we're all, I think, better for it. I really do. I believe that we are, in fact, better for it. Longtime imagination connoisseur and most member of the Post-Geek Singularity, Jeffrey Mao, is here. Jeffrey Mao has written another letter. Good morning, Master of Fun and Wonder, Viscount of Verisimilitude. Your remembrances from yesterday's Robservations, number 247, about late 70s horror and sci-fi movies got me thinking. As a lot of things you say get me thinking. As a young lad at the time, I started watching TV, and there was a veritable cornucopia, or at least it seemed to me, of an interesting subgenre of horror films, which I guess we can call Nature Gone Wild. The ones I remember are Kingdom of the Spiders, starring your old pal Shat. All I remember was the last scene where the whole area is covered with spiders. Or perhaps I'm getting that mixed up with Empire of the Ants with Shat's co-star Joan Collins. You're not. For some reason, I always thought they were in the same movie together. Needless to say, since an empire is bigger than a kingdom, I guess that means ants rule over spiders? The other one I remember is Day of the Animals, directed by who? William Girdler, who made what? The Manitou, right after he made Day of the Animals, which incongruously suggested that ozone layer depletion causes animals to go crazy. Willow Yang is now going, A brief scan of the IMDb shows gems from that time period, such as Ants from 1976, Food of the Gods from 1976, Grizzly from 76, Orca from 1977, Alligator from 1978. The list goes on and on. From around the same time, I remember seeing a Bigfoot or Sasquatch movie on TV, and I was freaked out about that one because one character opens a door and a remarkably lifelike Bigfoot is just standing there. Also, the makeup made him look like a regurgitated pizza. I could be confusing this with another movie, but that image stayed with me for a long time. Well, Jeffrey, I would say that John Frankenheimer's film Prophecy, the monster movie, might be what you're thinking of, but I could be wrong. I don't know if you ever recall seeing something like that. I did. I took Lisa Hammerly and I won tickets off KYYX radio, I think, and we went and saw Prophecy, and she was so scared she took off one of her sneakers and rolled it up into a ball as she watched the movie. I'm still friends with Lisa on Facebook. We've been friends since kindergarten. But yes, We went and saw Prophecy, and we still talk about it even to this day. I don't know if you recall ever seeing something like that. It's funny what your 4 to 6-year-old brain remembers. Also, we've been spoken ad nauseum, but we still speak of it, so nauseum must be good, right? About Star Trek and different ideas or directions and projects that they could have gone with, but didn't. I was watching a YouTube video on the Grunge channel that was about 6 unrealized Star Trek projects, and they talked about Phase 2. What I didn't realize or probably forgot was that they had actually done costume tests and filmed some test scenes. The one they showed was the Zahn character, but the one costume test that I'm sure would get anyone's attention is Persis Kambata's Ilea dressed in the original series uniform. Now, that would have been interesting to see in the Phase 2 series. I guess we at least have her V'ger probe costume to compensate. The test footage they showed was really poor quality, but they must have pulled it from some kind of supplementary material. Do you have any idea where that came from? I do, because I used it. We first saw that footage in, I believe it's in the Reeve Stevens book, maybe, but it's also on the Star Trek The Motion Picture Director's Edition DVD that was released. And I dipped into that footage and used even more of it. I used every last bit of footage that's in the Paramount archives. It's on a videotape, and it's in the 2nd season documentary for my Star Trek The Next Generation Blu-ray discs. They're not mine, but my documentary that I edited and produced, it's on that 2nd season disc. Also, to finish, I have another installment of cogent and astute things that my son asks or says. From this morning, Victor: Dad, is Luke a Jedi or a Sith? Me: well, he's definitely not a Sith. But he chokes people, and I thought Jedi didn't choke people. Well, he does have a point, and I've heard people try and headcanonize explanations for why Luke would appear to choke the Gamorrean guards in Return of the Jedi, and, well, none of them really work. They say, well, he's not really choking them, he's making them think they're choking. Okay, regardless, he's causing distress to another person for the purpose of gaining entry into Jabba's palace. He's choking them, plain and simple. See, kids notice these things. They notice these things, and tell Victor that that some guy in Pasadena says he's a smart lad and he has a good father, and to do what he tells you to do. Have a great day and a better tomorrow, says Jeffrey Mao. Well, Jeffrey, a good letter. Yeah, you know, the 70s, along with dystopian science fiction, there was all these nature run amok movies. And I think in the shadow of Jaws, there was Tintorera, which was another shark movie. There was Tentacles, about a giant octopus. It's kind of like we had like the beginning of the end in the 50s in the wake of, I think, Them or The Fly, or there was always something going on with insects. And also, if you've never seen, there is a really interesting film that was actually the only movie directed by the great Saul Bass, who did animated opening title sequences for many, many movies. Everyone knows who Saul Bass is. Since we're talking about Martin Scorsese a lot, he did the opening titles for, I think, Casino late in his life. He directed one movie that came out through Paramount called Phase 4, about scientists. I don't know where they're going. They've obviously heard something. Scientists not experimenting, but overseeing an ant colony that is suddenly almost has incredible intelligence. It's a really weird movie, but it has a really interesting vibe. If you guys have never seen Phase 4, really interesting movie. One of those staples of my early video years. I watched it over and over and over again. So, yes. But yeah, it was weird. I mean, what was it about the 70s and the 50s? We were scared of animals. And Prophecy is another. Prophecy was actually, now I want to say David Seltzer. Here's the thing. A lot of the stuff that pops into my head, if I get it wrong, please forgive me. But I do believe that David Seltzer, who wrote the novel The Omen, he wrote the book Prophecy. Now, I don't think it was a novelization of the movie, but Talia Shire and Robert Foxworth are in the movie, directed by John Frankenheimer, who had that great run in the 60s. Frankenheimer, who made Seconds, and who made The Train, and who made 7 Days in May, and who made The Manchurian Candidate, who made Birdman of Alcatraz, one of my favorite directors. He directed Prophecy, trying to, come back. And that movie was about animals that were affected by mercury in the groundwater that was runoff from a manufacturing plant. And yeah, this bear looked like it was regurgitated pizza. And yeah, so I don't know, it was animals run amok. And yeah, I like that stuff. Magic K says that means he's going to Kevin Feige will be overseeing the TV and comics division of Marvel. It absolutely is true. He's overseeing everything. Magic K says, I felt he might make comics more towards the movies, which I kind of felt conflicted on this news. Well, look, for those of you who are not paying attention to comic books, the just finished run, Jonathan Hickman's run on House of X and Power of 10, or Power of X. It's House of X and Power of 10. If you haven't been keeping up with this 12-issue X-Men miniseries, it's a staggering achievement as far as X-Men comics go. And it's an amazing science fiction story. It's also an amazing X-Men story that has reset. It's made all of the X-Men. I mean, the X-Men, even I jumped out around issue 450. I was like, how many more X-Men comics do I have to read in my life? I mean, I think I have an unbroken run from like X-Men 94 to X-Men 450. It's like, dude, something like that. But it's an amazing Hickman's run. And I would hope that Kevin Feige would not want to interfere with that run or other runs of that ilk. If Hickman can do what he did with X-Men, all bets are off. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the future with all of our comic book franchises. Franz Morehart is here. Dear Rob, the first 40 pages or so of Stephen King's 61st and latest novel, The Institute, have a leisurely, steady pace, frequently pausing to attend to quaint and seemingly unimportant details as it gradually lulls the reader into a dreamlike deceptive calm, perhaps mimicking the feel of a night knocker strolling through a sleeping twilight town before the inevitable storm, while recapturing, to my mind at least, some of the quiet fairy tale vibe which made Needful Things so charmingly underrated. I would like to finish reviewing this book, but I've run out of nice things to say about it, and I am reminded of the empty-headed cliche often spoken by insipid, pearl-clutching church moms in their crusade to turn children into dishonest dipshits. If you've nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. What did you think of The Institute, Rob? You know what? I haven't finished it myself either. So I can't speak to that, but I think that's very funny. You know, I'm an unabashed lover of Stephen King, but his oeuvre has been very hit and miss for me. You know, I think the book, and I don't necessarily know why this is the case. I think of his recent fiction, my favorite book that he put out was Revival, which I really liked a lot. The Outsider was, again, a spinoff of the Mr. Mercedes thing. It was okay. And then what else I recently read? Dr. Sleep was okay. But yeah, I haven't read anything. I don't know why Revival got to me, but I will come back to you on The Institute. But I'm sorry you feel that way. Every time I read a Stephen King book, I just like reading his books, and sometimes they are disappointing, to be honest. What can you say? This is very funny. Christopher Collins sends in this letter. Willow Yang is similar to the shark in Jaws, or how the audience never saw Wilson's face on the show Home Improvement, or we heard about but never saw Howard Wolowitz's mother on Big Bang Theory. But I think Willow is most like the shark in Jaws, is most like the shark Bruce for representation here on the Burnettwork. You know how in the first Jaws film you would see people die without seeing the shark, or you would see fins and a tail? That's how I feel about Willow Yang on her letters. I wonder if people would still be interested once we heard and saw what she really sounded like. If we saw and heard her, would we lose interest in the same way that Jurassic Park or Jurassic World dinosaurs become less interesting in the sequels? Personally, I like keeping the mystery of Willow Yang. Well, here's the thing. That's an interesting proposition, but I've always been of the belief that, first of all, I already really like Willow Yang because of her letters, because of the way she thinks, and I don't think, I know she's put herself down or whatever, I think Willow Yang does not understand that she probably has a well, like Neil Diamond sang about E.T., a heart light. And, I don't care. I mean, I think she's probably delightful. And I'll bet you that meeting Willow Yang in person would make her more endearing to you, and even more so than the mystery, because you could see the light in her eye and the smile on her face. That's what I'm thinking. Because wouldn't it be fun to see the joy as she tells you about things that she loves, the joy that would emanate off of her face that she doesn't even know is happening? When people talk about, I love watching people talk about things that they're excited about, because like I look at Elizabeth. Elizabeth is editing. She never edited. She sat here and watched me edit for hundreds of hours. And now she's editing her second film and she's into it, man. She's an artist. She got into Art Center. She's editing now and she finally gets it. She understands. And there is a joy, an intensity to her face. I know that joy and intensity very well, because when I first started editing, and even to this day, it never goes away. So I think that Willow Yang would not be one of those people. She would not be. I think that I for one would love to sit down with Willow, because you could see, I'm sure you could see the excitement in her face, whether she's talking about molecular biology or whether she's talking about bad molecular biology in a Star Trek episode. I'll bet you that sitting across from her, listening to her wax rhapsodic about any of these things, she would be able to convey the sheer joy she has about this part of her life. And by the way, you know what she says she doesn't believe in romance, but I've been carrying on a romance with my interests my whole life, and I think that there's something romantic about people who have a romanticism about their interests that it emanates from them. So, but then again, what's funny about what you say? To me, it's not just Willow Yang; it's all of you. What does Stubble McShave look like? What do you look like, Christopher Collins? What does Ian Samuels look like? I mean, I know I've seen a picture of Ian Samuels. What does Emilio Hansen look like? What does the Richard look like? I don't know. I Miss Hobday in Japan, I know what she looks like. She's somebody I want to party with. There's people that I know, but none of you. Like, I wish everybody, like, we could interact and see pictures of everyone. I always prefer seeing people. I think you're never wrong by finally meeting people in the flesh. At least that's the way I look at it. This one comes from Andrew Martin. Greetings, Viceroy of Verisimilitude. To paraphrase an old morning radio cliche, long-time listener, first-time letter writer. I woke up this past Saturday morning to the news that actor Robert Forster had passed away. Most of the articles I saw about it commented on the unfortunate timing due to the premiere of El Camino and Forster's death being so close together. But I saw it a different way. I noticed the Disney Movie Club was finally going to release The Black Hole on Blu-ray. Well, if it's going to be a Movie Club exclusive, that means it's going to be loaded with special features like cast and crew interviews, trailers, commercials, and a commentary, right? I was disappointed but not surprised after reading reviews that revealed not only that there wasn't any special features, but the film transfer was unimpressive, and they took out the overture that was included on previous DVD releases. Given Disney's preoccupation with the Star Wars machine, making a quality Black Hole Blu-ray for a niche market probably isn't going to be a priority. I don't know if this is a case of Hollywood voodoo, but it feels like Disney's disrespect toward its own product, especially since it's the studio's first ever PG film, killed Robert Forster, and perhaps any chance of a decent release of The Black Hole on Blu-ray died with him. It seems like a sour cherry on top of a very dark cake. I tweeted at Shout Factory asking them what the odds were of getting the rights to The Black Hole, and they said, not very likely, which leads me to believe companies like Arrow Video and Kino Lorber would have had just as much difficulty. But then I remember there was actually a pretty good DVD release of another Disney film, Tron. Not only that, but I remember that the notorious RMB did the behind-the-scenes documentary, The Making of Tron. This led me to the question, how would the Viceroy of Verisimilitude make a Black Hole documentary? Just curious to know your thoughts. Keep on connoisseuring, Drew. from La Crosse, Wisconsin, WI. Well, Drew, Mr. Martin, first of all, thank you for this. And yes, the great Robert Forster, who goes all the way back to movies like Medium Cool, that Haskell Wexler actually directed and was famously shot at the 1968 Democratic National Convention, where they had basically an uprising, which is in the movie. Robert Forster was one of our great character actors, and yes, he was in El Camino. He unfortunately did not die of a bad release of The Black Hole. He died, unfortunately, of brain cancer. I actually used to speak with Robert Forster. He hung out. There was I want to say it closed in 2011. There was a Greasy Spoon, a diner in West Hollywood called the Silver Spoon. And I used to see Robert Forster there all the time. And there were a number of other actors that were there. And they would just hang out. And Robert Forster was always approachable, always would smile, always would talk to you. And I had a number of conversations with him, including about The Black Hole. And he laughed, because he knew that there's only a certain kind of person who talks to him about The Black Hole, which is, a nerd. But I'm like, come on, man. Ernest Borgnine, Anthony Perkins, Yvette Mimay, and it was amazing. Maximilian Schell as Dr. Hans Reinhardt. And of course, you had Maximilian and Old Bob, and you had, of course, Vincent, voiced by Roddy McDowell. I have The Black Hole Blu-ray. It was actually Ted Van Dyne sent it to me. Ted Van Dyne, who I know on Twitter. He actually graciously got me and sent them to me, the Black Hole Blu-ray and the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea Blu-ray. And why this kind of bums me out about what you said is I worked my first regular job working on special features. I worked for Jeff Curdy and Michael Pellerin at their company, Curdy Pellerin, along with Phil Savinick, who also had a company called TV is Okay. And I started in, I want to say 2000. I think the summer of, I did a free enterprise, but my first job after that was I worked on the Fantasia anthology and The Emperor's New Groove. And before they were doing DVD and Blu-ray, DVD special features. Before they were doing that, they were doing laser discs, these big box sets of Disney laser discs, and 20,000 Leagues and Tron. And it was a great time because Disney, they were the first people aside from Criterion to really jump into the special features market on Laserdisc. I mean, other people did, but they went in, they made these beautiful white with boxed editions with foil embossed. It was amazing. So we did things like Monsters Incorporated and the Toy Story box set, and they gave me, I was able to make an 88-minute documentary on the making of Tron. Not a lot of people, The Black Hole is not beloved. By the way, they have reissued The Black Hole Blu-ray with the overture, John Barry's great overture. His score for Black Hole is one of the best things about the movie. But the first place I would go as far as The Black Hole is concerned would be to Harrison Ellenshaw, who I interviewed for Tron. I love Harrison Ellenshaw. He worked on Star Wars, and there's a lot of people that worked on The Black Hole that were old school Disney. They're not around anymore, but I would go back and I'd get to interview as many people as I could about the film and just do what I did with Tron, and go do a full blown. What would really be interesting is to examine, and again, I don't know if they would allow us to do that, but Disney in the late 70s and early 80s was in a transitional place. And The Black Hole was their attempt as a studio to compete on a large scale with movies like Star Wars. And so was Tron. But because it was Disney and their live action movies were their movie releases in theaters, they couldn't get the theaters. But it would be interesting to go back, and that was an interesting time. Ron Miller was running the studio. Was it Ron Miller? I think it was running the studio. And that's when they made things like The Black Cauldron, and stuff was wacky at Disney then. So it'd be interesting to go back and delve into that. I touched upon that a little bit in my Tron documentary, but and Disney's probably better off looking into their past now because they feel good about themselves today. It's a very different place than it was in the late 70s and early 80s. But look, Robert Forster was a great guy. And one of the cool things I think about movies is that when people have left us, they leave us this rich legacy that not only captures a moment in time for them, but captures a moment in time for America, for humanity, whatever. And it's amazing. I often wonder, wouldn't it have been great if we had movies and video equipment like 2,000 years ago? If you could have really documented life in Rome, or you could have been at the crucifixion or the resurrection with a video camera, tonight, Golgotha, something like that. It would have been amazing. If we had the kind of technology that we have now to preserve the last 2,000 or 4,000, wouldn't it be funny if you were like a documentary dude that was there for however long it took him to build the pyramids? And, tonight on the Learning Channel, the pyramid, the Great Pyramids of Giza, like, how are they built? We'll take you on an inside journey into all the slaves that made the pyramids possible. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was sad, but I feel your pain. I mean, we did live through, I will say this, we did live through, there is a good 10 years of amazing documentaries about movies, and there's things I keep forgetting. The Criterion copy of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, I've said it before. There was a great when New Line was putting out their full-blown DVD editions in the early aughts. They did a great documentary on Hedwig. They brought it over. Criterion brought it over. Shout Factory is doing things. I mean, you just never know who might be coming out of retirement to do a documentary for Shout Factory. You just never know. Who knows? But yeah, it's just a different time now. And I still do cherish all the time that I spent. I put up one of my memories that popped up on Facebook today was when I was on the South Island of New Zealand at outside of Oamaru at Elephant Rocks, north of Dunedin, on the South Island, working on Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on and off for the better part of 2 years. I mean, that was amazing. Being in country in New Zealand, boy, those were the days. Anyway, but I want to thank you for that letter. Very cool. Thank you for writing in. Always good to hear about those things. I love it when people have watched my documentaries because you work so hard on them, and it's sad to think that people don't see them anymore. So, actually, you know what, Christopher, you sent me in another quick letter. I'm going to read it. I've been looking at the YouTube videos by Trekkie Channel, and I was wondering why the versions of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan are so drastic on cuts and things being in and out from one version to the next, plus the color palette being so different from one another in colors. It looks like the 2002 Director's Cut DVD is the best version. Well, good question. First of all, I really think that there are basically two versions of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan that have been released on video. There's the theatrical version, and then there's the extended, I guess you'd call it a director's cut version that has a few different takes of scenes and has more Ike Eisenman, Scotty's nephew, just a few little nips and tucks, about 5 minutes. The 4K version, I think, is truly the definitive version of Star Trek II. I think Star Trek II has never been well served on video. It's never looked great on video. Back in 2002, they did these 2-disc and more. They did these 2-disc special editions. I actually worked on the Star Trek V disc. I interviewed Shatner and did the audio commentary that Paramount made me cut to ribbons. But yeah, they were great. And the 2002 version of both Star Trek II and Star Trek VI are director's cuts. You see Renee Auberjonois as Colonel West, and you get to see him unmasked at the end. It's a Klingon mask that he's wearing when he tries to assassinate the Federation president. So yeah, those are great discs, but I do like the 4K of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan the best, and it has both versions. So there you go. Thanks again for another letter. This comes from Josh Rizakis. Hello, Rob, and my fellow. Josh is a great guy, and he's been a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity, and he is an imagination connoisseur, and he's known as Razman's Reality. Rizakis is how you pronounce his name. I believe. Hello, Rob, and my fellow members of the Post-Geek Singularity. Razman's Reality here again. I forgot to put my nickname into my last letter about Wesley Crusher, but I might not need to anymore, and that's what I'm writing about today. As you know, Rob, thanks to the inspiration that you and John Campea have provided me, I'm starting up again on YouTube fairly soon. Thank you so much again for all your encouragement. I'm writing in today to ask you if you feel that going by my nickname can hurt me as a creator. Years ago, everyone did, but nowadays it just seems like everyone uses their real name. Should I switch things up and do that instead? By the way, here's an attempt at a phonetic spelling of my last name to try and help you out. You're very close already. Rzauskas. It's Rzauskas. It's Josh Rzauskas. There's an L there. Thanks as always, O master of fun and wonder. All right, Rzauskas. Mr. Wazowski. Rzauskas. There you go. Well, that's a good question. I have never been online anonymously. I don't post or do anything anonymously. And you know what? To be quite honest, I probably should have done that a long time ago. But I didn't, because when I first got online, when I first got on Facebook in 2007, and Twitter, because I'd already made films and done DVD documentaries, I was a big geek, a big fan. So I just decided to use my real name. I guess it would have been pointless anyway. But it really depends. I mean, you have to start thinking about your online persona, I think, is your brand. Like, who do you want to be known as? You go by Josh Raz or something. I mean, you want something that, first of all, the internet and social media should be fun. Like, your persona should be fun and amusing. And if you already have a name for yourself, go with that, or reinvent yourself however you want. I mean, obviously, people like John Schnepp and John Campea and myself, and we use our own names because we actually have to interact with people. We're not like, we go out into the real world, we might interview people, or I'm working with somebody, even Drew McWeeny, who I work with on the Schmodown, part of the great team, The Family. Even Drew started out as Moriarty for Ain't It Cool News. And then he went to his real name. And I think, just for me, I think in this day and age, if you go by your real name, you're saying something to the world in terms of how you're going to present yourself. You're immediately standing by your opinion. You are not hiding anonymously behind a keyboard. And I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's something to be said for that. And, I would say be proud of who you are. Be proud of the name your parents bestowed upon you. And by the way, Rzauskas. Rzauskas is a cool name if I'm getting it right. Josh Rzauskas. I mean, that just sounds cool. Like, if somebody asks, hey, man, do you know Josh Rzauskas? I'd be like, yeah, man, I do. I don't know. Is that true? I think your name's cool. Rzauskas it's fun to say. It's like an onomatopoeia. It sounds like it is. Rzauskas. So I like it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've been saving this one, but I'm going to read it. This is from our moderator, the Sheriff of Nottingham himself, Terry Flynn, over in the UK. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Terry Flynn. Terry always writes very interesting letters. And, when we're not having private conversations that Vesna and Willow would love to be overhearing, he's writing very interesting letters, and this one is right up there. Greetings, Rob. I hope this isn't too long a piece, though I deal with a couple of issues you may have strong views on. First, my best friend I was an undergraduate with at Cambridge is now a professor of cultural studies in Tokyo. No promises, but he might be able to get that hot toy or model you need before we meet for Bond 25 in London. I need to check dates. He always has lots to bring back, so I can't promise on his behalf, but I will do my best. Oh, man. That would be the new Gundam from Char's Counterattack. It's a whole new Bandai Gundam. It's like $950, and it's amazing, and I have to have it, and you can't. It's sold out everywhere. So Bandai, please make more. Second, being someone who's fluent in Japanese to a professional standard, he often gets insights into Japanese news and corporate affairs long before we in the West do. I asked him about how well Sony was really doing. Interestingly, he has noticed a clampdown on Sony stories in the media, which is usually a bad sign. He suspects Sony is in trouble, at least where Sony Pictures is concerned. My hypothesis that the two extra Spider-Man movies are somewhat of a holding pattern until the game is clearer is something he agreed with entirely. This is most definitely not to say Sony are out of the game, but they are playing for time. He thinks Sony are internally debating their Hollywood future, and a lot of deals struck recently give them leeway to exit soon, should they choose to, given the relatively poor reception to their attempted universe models. Plus, they have no streaming service. Finally, the latest Star Wars and other fights over representation in movies. I like to think I'm neither one extreme or the other. Like you, I value a good story and verisimilitude and don't want minorities shoehorned in. However, I feel there has been somewhat of a bandwagon effect when it comes to people like Brie Larson. Perhaps she didn't present her points in the most consumer-friendly way in interviews. Perhaps she found herself a little encumbered with an MCU character that was supposed to be quite unemotional. But lots of people have, via the internet echo chamber, taken this too far. I feel I value a lot of the same movie critics that you do, including the Critical Drinker. I love Critical Drinker. I agree with over 90% of his output. There are other more well-known review sites for science fiction who report leaks generally correctly, but what I don't like is the jumping on the bandwagon effect, repeating points, magnifying the echoes or of commentators who have more nefarious agendas. I understand things are tough. YouTube is not helped by changing its algorithm, in effect encouraging this type of behavior, but I hope it is kept in check. I like to think I can judge the flaws in a movie like Captain Marvel without having a bunch of my favorite YouTubers echoing really nasty comments from the commentariat. I know what you're saying. Commentariat. I like that. They don't need to do that. They're good already. You give unbiased opinions and strike the critical middle ground. I wish some others would do that. Kind regards as always, and I hope this shows my serious side for a while. Terry. Well, first of all, Terry, thanks. I love it when you already do enough work for the channel, but the fact that you write in thoughtful letters, very interesting as well. You know, I find it odd. I find it odd that first of all, movies now are being shown in a global marketplace. When a Star Wars movie is made, they want it to appeal to the largest number of individuals. And when somebody like Kelly Marie Tran of Vietnamese descent is added to the cast of Star Wars Last Jedi as her character Rose Tico, I don't necessarily see that as being somebody pandering. No, it's just these movies are global, and the idea that we aren't going to see certain people from the planet Earth, if we're not showing all of the people from the planet Earth in movies that are supposed to take place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, well, how are you supposed to believe that we have a universe, or indeed another galaxy, full of not just aliens, but all different kinds of folks? I mean, it doesn't bother me. And I find it really interesting that everyone's like, there's this social justice warrior agenda. Look, man, the agenda is to make money. Nobody is trying to besmirch the reputation of some other ethnic group by suddenly including a different ethnic group. I mean, China is a huge market. I mean, Joker hasn't even penetrated China, but as my friend Adrian Iscaria says, if it did, it would make $1 billion. I don't know about that, but I do know that people want to obviously crack the Chinese marketplace because there's a lot of money to be made there. And I have no problem. I mean, I guess it was because growing up with Star Trek and growing up with another show, UFO, Jerry Anderson's UFO, that, believe it or not, even though it was made in the UK, had a pretty diverse, ethnically diverse cast. And it was something, I guess, I never paid attention to the fact that it was ethnically diverse, because the things that I liked just had ethnic diversity in them. Like, it was never, I've famously told people my first crush was Lieutenant Uhura, was Nichelle Nichols. And when her midriff was exposed in Mirror Mirror, which is still my favorite episode of the original series, I might have been like 6 years old, and I didn't quite understand why that was so exciting to me, but it was pretty exciting to me. That and her little green earrings that she wore. I mean, I thought she was a stone cold fox, that Lieutenant Uhura was. Now, it never occurred to me at the time, and I've told this story before, that she was black. I was a kid. I didn't understand it. I didn't sit there and go, oh, there's a black woman on the bridge of the Enterprise. Because, I grew up in Seattle, and it was not a very ethnically diverse place, but it never occurred to me. I'm just like, Lieutenant Uhura, Uhura is the bomb. She's the bomb, yo. It never occurred to me not to think she was a bomb. I didn't encounter real racism until later on, until I was older. Not very much older, and I just didn't understand that. I remember I had a conversation with my dad about racism once. I think I put it, I was like, Dad, why wouldn't somebody like Lieutenant Uhura? She's really pretty. It never occurred to me. So I do think it is sort of very interesting. Look, studios, movies, they're supposed to appeal to the widest number of people. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you believe, we live in a global marketplace now. I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists. I mean, this is the natural evolution of humanity. Now that we can our supercomputers, I can literally talk to anybody around the planet Earth with my iPhone. The fact is, all peoples are going to start seeing themselves show up in movies, and the agenda is more people should go see these movies, and the more people that see themselves in movies, well, they might go to the film, they might go to movies and make more money. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Let's make more money. This idea that somebody has, like, I don't think here's what I'm sure. Like, Brie Larson, I think Brie Larson is attractive. I think she's really pretty, but in a very girl next door sort of a way. She's the girl you could think you could possibly see yourself when you were in high school. You could be like, I could date Brie Larson. She's very attractive, but she's not like attractive like, say, a Bond girl is attractive. The girl that dies in Bernice, however you pronounce her last name, the girl that was in Skyfall that gets killed by Silva. I mean, she was amazing. She was half Asian and half French. I mean, she's amazing. I forget her last name, Beatrice. But who wouldn't want to date her? But she was like one of the most beautiful creatures that ever lived on the planet. But it's like this idea that Brie Larson, she won an Oscar for her portrayal in the movie Room. She's an Oscar-winning actress. So Kevin Feige makes the decision, like, wow, if we could get somebody like Brie Larson to play Captain Marvel, to play Carol Danvers, let's try and get her. And when Brie Larson makes these comments about the fact that it would be nice if, I mean, let's face it, I won't throw anybody under the bus, but my YouTube analytics, and I say this a lot, currently show that 98% of my audience are men between the ages of 20 and 55. 98%. Now, if Brie Larson were to come and meet me, she would say, Rob, it would be nice if there was a little bit more than 98% men watching your channel. Wouldn't it be great if, we got a bit more ladies in there? Like, wouldn't it be great if your channel was like 25% girls and 75% guys? Well, I could tell her, I'd say, Brie, everybody here would enjoy that without a doubt. And that's all she's saying. She wasn't saying necessarily that white men are bad, but in the space of comic books or superhero movies, she wanted to see a little bit more, like, can we get some like different voices in here? I mean, I've wanted the same thing since I was going to science fiction conventions when I was, in elementary school. I'm like, gosh, it'd be nice if there were more girls here. And lo and behold, now that I'm a middle-aged man with one foot in the grave, when you go to Comic-Con, there's just as many girls as there are guys. There's moms, there's dads, there's brothers, there's sisters, girls and boys, people of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds. We live in the post-geek singularity. Our movies and entertainment should reflect that. That's what I think, Terry. And I feel that way. When you talk about jumping on the bandwagon effect, I feel, look, when I say that I hate Star Trek Discovery, I don't hate Star Trek Discovery because of some forced diversity agenda. Because look, I love Captain Sisko. I liked Star Trek back when the casting of Ben Sisko, you forget the man is black. You forget Avery Brooks is black halfway through Emissary because he's just Sisko, and we already saw all that. But the fact that they've leaned so heavily into all the characters, I mean, I have gay friends of mine that cannot stand the portrayal of gay men in Star Trek Discovery. I mean, I completely understand that. What they're not, they have forgotten. Give us great characters and tell great stories. They're not doing either one. And I think that's what people want. Now, in terms of what you're saying, and yes, I agree. People jump on the bandwagon and you get clicks. I mean, I appreciate you saying, like, I feel we live in a great time. We really do. We live in the best time. There's less famine, despite all the horrific stuff we read about. There's less famine, there's less war, there's less killing. I mean, as far as humanity goes, we're doing pretty good. We can talk about, is there a long way to go? Yes. But for the most part, we're doing all right. There's a lot of good going on in the world, and being alive today is way better than being alive 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago. I mean, if I was part of the aristocracy in ancient Rome, there might have been some upside to that. But the downside is there'd be no Star Trek or Star Wars or the MCU, or I wouldn't even have a computer to talk to you lovely people on. So I think we're doing okay. But yes, I don't know why everybody is so angry all the time. And really, it's not a social justice warrior agenda. It's not the access media that I keep hearing that drives me crazy. What we want, what all fans want, what I want, what everybody who has fandom menace channels want that I somehow am pitted against. But, Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, he reached out to me and said we should do a show together. We've been talking about it. We should. You know what we all want? We all want great stories that are well told. And when we see our favorite things like Star Trek and Star Wars, which now become corporate product, and we're not getting great stories that are well told, we wonder, well, wait a minute. We want to give you money. We want to pay you to see these things. We want to buy action figures. We want to go to Galaxy's Edge. We want to buy 4K, 3D, Blu-ray, double dips of whatever. We want to buy them, but we also want them to be good. I mean, that's what's so frustrating is when the corporate agendas, I think, outweigh what we all want, which is great. I mean, what's so funny is even the corporations want the same things we want. They just don't know, under the auspices of corporate leadership, how to get there. They don't know, so they make the way somebody hire. I'll give you a perfect example. So when I was working at Warner Brothers, I was a management trainee. I was hired by the senior vice president of production, Bill Young, to work for feature production. And basically, I was a glorified PA, but I was called a management trainee. And the point of the job was so we could watch how feature films were produced at the studio level or the corporate level, and how did the studio manage the productions of these movies. And underneath Bill were 3 executive production managers. And I worked for Kurt Newman, who was one of those. And what was so cool about that was Kurt Newman's dad, I think Kurt Newman Sr., had directed both Rocket Ship XM and the original The Fly, if memory serves. So it was very cool to work at Warner Brothers. And I watched how the studios made films. But when you were there, all of the people that they hired in creative positions, and there I was able to meet Lisa Henson, who was a senior vice president of production. She had, if memory serves, she had graduated from Yale with a degree in comparative mythology. She was amazing. But all of the people that worked at Warner Brothers, unless they knew somebody like Courtney Valenti, who was Jack Valenti's daughter, was there. I don't know what her educational background was. I just know she was very nice to me. But all of the people that were hired were Ivy League educated business people. And they were put into positions of great power at the studio because they were all senior vice presidents or vice presidents of creative. People like Tom LaSalle was there, Bob Brassel was there, Alan Stewart was there, Lisa Henson was there. There's a lot of other people that were there as well. And they were usually Ivy League educated people, because from a corporate hiring standpoint, from a studio hiring standpoint, you hire people that have Ivy League educations. You just do. And I understand that. Now, was there anybody there that was particularly well versed in Batman or comics mythology? That was easily Lisa Henson. They gave everything to her, which was why it was so great. I used to go into her office every night and hang out. Like I've told people, one night she came and got me. We were the last people in the executive offices. I never wanted to leave because there was always somebody whose desk I could go look at that I shouldn't be, reading what was on their desk. But that's what I did. But she was always the last person to leave. And one year when Driving Miss Daisy was up for the Oscars, we actually went to Amblin Entertainment and watched the Oscars. It was amazing. But the people that were working there were Ivy League educated people, because that's who you hire. So when it comes to like Star Trek, you go to people like Alex Kurtzman, who obviously worked on Star Trek with Bob Orci for Star Trek 09. And the reason, from a corporate standpoint, he's got Star Trek experience. He's got television experience. He's part of the whole Bad Robot extended family. So from a CBS perspective or a Paramount perspective, if they ever come back together, that's a smart hire, because on paper, they look good. And a guy like Alex Kurtzman was going to start the dark universe at Universal because they did the same thing. But, he'd never directed a movie before, much less work with a star like Tom Cruise's of caliber. Tom Cruise would eat that guy for breakfast. I mean, just because the way he works, you have to really know your shit to work with Tom Cruise. And so that didn't work out. So Alex Kurtzman, I get hired by, on paper, I get hired by how many other people wrote $200 million Star Trek movies? No one. I mean, he did. Those are the most expensive Star Trek movies ever made. He wrote 2 of them. So there's really and he worked in television, Xena and what, Hercules. I mean, whatever. That's why they hire him. And that's how it works. Now, whether he has, if somebody's going to hire you and comes to you and goes, we want to reboot Star Trek and you're going to handle it. Brian Fuller's leaving. We need somebody. You're on the list. What's he going to say? No. You don't ever say no to a job in Hollywood. And I was parlaying it. He's going to hold on to it for as long as he can, no matter how much it costs. And that ship has sailed. You got to have people work on it. I mean, that's just how the world works. And unfortunately, we don't have people always say to me, Rob, you should run Star Trek. I would never get hired to run Star Trek. I directed one movie 20 years ago that made no money. I've been eking out a meager living in Hollywood. If I'm so smart, why aren't I wildly successful, wildly commercially successful? And that's a good question. I mean, the fact is, I've made decisions more as a fan than as a professional, and I've done jobs that I've wanted to do, or I've done silly things. Like, I've been lucky since I was a little kid. I've always taken jobs I really liked. I put up with a lot. I've done a lot of stuff. I wouldn't necessarily. I made a few mistakes. There's a couple of, I would say, 3 or 4 things that I would have done differently, but not many. And if I had done those things differently, maybe my career would be different. But it's just I don't have the credibility to do something that Alex Kurtzman is doing. I haven't put in that time. I don't have those connections. And so that's why he gets hired. And I don't begrudge people who get jobs. I don't begrudge Alex Kurtzman for running Star Trek. I begrudge Alex Kurtzman for creating bad Star Trek. He's in a position he could do anything he wanted. He could hire anybody he wanted. He could ask anybody to be a consultant on the show that he wanted. But, they make hires like Michelle Paradise. And I'm like, why did you do that? And Michael Chabon, I would have made that hire, but listening to him talk and seeing what he's so far written for Star Trek, But again, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author. Why wouldn't you hire him? So anyway, as far as Spider-Man is concerned and Sony, that is very interesting, because a lot of people have been talking about Sony and whether or not Sony is going to be selling Spider-Man anytime soon. Look, One, God love Sony for announcing that PlayStation 5 is going to have a 4K disk drive in it, which means it will preserve physical media. You will be able to buy 4K drives for at least probably maybe another decade. God loves Sony because the PlayStation 5 doesn't come out for a while. So that's good. That means, I'll be that much closer to my grave. I'm going to buy my first Blu-ray player was a PlayStation 3. I never got a PlayStation 4 because I just never did. I had my PlayStation 3 for a long time, and then I got busy and didn't have time to play video games because I'm obsessive. When I was playing video games, the last video game was Grand Theft Auto 5, I think, that I got obsessed about. I played the whole game all the way through, and then I was playing online. It was great. But yeah, I looked at Spider-Man. I wanted to get into PlayStation 4, but never did. But I will be getting into PlayStation 5, if only because I want to. Plus, what the games are going to come out with are going to be insane. But what you've got available. So if Sony is not doing well, I mean, Sony Pictures has not necessarily had a bang-up year. I could see, depending on what their library is like, the old Columbia Pictures library, I could see an Apple buying them. But again, you have the same problem that you have now. Who's going to make the movies? Who's going to call the shots? And people don't know what they're doing, or they make wrong decisions because now it's too expensive. But Apple looks like the talent they're putting together to make their streaming shows. The fact that they renewed For All Mankind, Ron Moore's new show, is pretty amazing. But in terms of Spider-Man, I mean, we talked about that today. If Sony said, Marvel, you can buy Spider-Man for $6 billion, would they do it? They've got Morbius the Living Vampire coming out. You've got Venom 2 going before the cameras next month. I don't know. I mean, they just spent how many? $71 million for $71 billion to buy Fox. Would they spend another $6 billion to buy Spider-Man? I think they might. I think Sony could be weighing their options. I know if somebody else buys Sony, like Apple, that Spider-Man might revert back to. Look, why you buy Sony is not for Spider-Man. You buy Sony for their back catalog of movies, which, by the way, they've done a good job of exploiting. But, a company like Apple coming in and buying Sony for a decent amount of money, getting that back catalog for their new streaming service, I could see that happening. I mean, it bums me out. It bums me out that the major motion picture studios Paramount is hanging on by a thread. Terminator, after Gemini Man's failure, if Terminator Dark Fate doesn't do well, what do they got? Top Gun Maverick? Paramount with their lot. I mean, it's I hate to see it. I hate to see it go down the tubes. But you know what? We live in a new world, a really interesting world, and people still want content. So people are going to still be making content, even if the studios go away. So it's going to be a really interesting world. I don't know what's going to happen with Sony, but I wouldn't be surprised if Apple buys them and Spider-Man reverts back to Marvel, or they're trying to get Marvel. I could see them wanting to get that $6 billion cheddar for Spider-Man now. Sony wouldn't mind that infusion of cash. Who knows? I don't know. It's interesting. I'm going to remind you all, if you like these chats, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and all of those things. I think I'm going to bring this chat to a close now after talking about that. I want to thank everybody for writing in. First of all, I want to thank my moderators, Detective Jim, Greg Smith, Terry from the Sheriff of Nottingham, whose letter I just read, and of course, the Honorable Mike Bodden, Mayor Mike Bodden, who is as he said to me yesterday, he's in the political fight for his life. He's no longer running unchallenged. There's a woman that's lit a fire under his ass. It's a horse race today, man. There it is, Riverdale, Iowa, heating up. The election is heating up. All 450 people that live in that city, man, and whoever those kids are that can't vote, so bring down the voting age. I don't know what's going to happen, but Mike's coming back soon. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for writing in. You can always go to the Burnettwork website, theburnettwork.net, and find me there. Send me letters. We love getting letters. I did not get new letters today. If I haven't got to your letter lately, I mean, I'm trying to get to as many letters as I can, but I can't get to every letter. So I apologize for that. But I try to get to a lot of them, and I'm getting so many interesting. The problem is you guys send me so many interesting letters. It's amazing. But anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. You know what I haven't done is I haven't looked at if anybody sent me in any chats. I don't want to leave any chats. Leave no chat behind. Samuel Phoenix says, "Do you think Disney really pulled the plug on Brie Larson, or it's only gossip trying to make news?" Okay, Samuel. Captain Marvel made over $1 billion. I don't know. I have no firsthand knowledge about what people think of Brie Larson or whatever, but she's an Academy Award-winning actress. And let's just face it, all actresses can be known for diva-esque behavior now and again. I have no knowledge of whether Brie Larson is a diva at all. I do not know. I know she seems to have a good friendship with Sam Jackson. And I don't think they would pull the plug on if you make $1 billion for a studio, you're not going to pull the plug. But again, I don't know. More often than not, those kinds of things are rumors, especially in this milieu. People have been taking pot shots at Brie Larson. Everybody wants look. It's Brie Larson gets hired to do. Think about this. This is the thing that keeps me up at night, to be honest. I think about Kelly Marie Tran, young actress, hoofing it in Hollywood. She's of Vietnamese descent, so she doesn't even have how many offers or jobs even come her way. How many auditions does she even get to go to? Kelly Marie Tran, cute as a button, total nerd, gets the dream job of her life, which is to be in a Star Wars movie. Who doesn't want to be in a Star Wars movie? Does she have any control over the character that she was cast in? No. She plays the part to the best of her ability. And I thought she was great as Rose Tico. It was not her fault that perhaps the side journey to Canto Bight and the vitriol that was leveled against The Last Jedi and people weren't satisfied with it. Can you imagine? You get your dream job. You get this thing like, oh my God, I'm in a Star Wars movie. I'm Kelly Marie Tran. Her family came over from Vietnam. She's an immigrant to this country, or at least her parents are. She scores. There is no downside to that. You like, oh my God, I'm in a Star Wars movie. And who are the people that turn it into a nightmare for her? Star Wars fans. The very people that she should be meeting around the world and bonding with and smiling and being like, oh my God, I was in The Last Jedi. And look what happened. And I think the same was probably true of Brie Larson. She's in a movie and probably she wins an Academy Award. Incredible performance. Marvel comes after her. Come play in our sandbox. It could only be a great thing, right? And look what happens. Look what happens to her. Our own community comes after her, pillories her for any number of crimes. And in her mind, I mean, my God, she's been trying to act. I mean, she cut a pop record, for God's sake. She's been hoofing it in Hollywood for a long time. A long time pounding that pavement. It is a thankless, horrible task working in Hollywood on any level. By all rights, I should have put a gun in my mouth and blown my brains out a long time ago, but I'm still here doing whatever I need to do to make ends meet, to keep it all going, to keep my love of cinema alive. And part of these chats have done that for me. But can you imagine? I mean, the very people that you think like, my God, the fact that I'm not saying that you have to love everything that we get, everything that rolls down the pike. We shouldn't love it. We don't have to love everything. We should love things that are good. But on the other hand, I'm astonished we even live in a world that a Captain Marvel movie exists. I can't believe it. Much less one that you had Ben Mendelsohn playing a Skrull. I mean, that Sam Jackson was de-aged in. Agent Coulson came back. I mean, look, is Captain Marvel my favorite Marvel movie? No. But I've said this before. I think it's interesting. It took more of an indie cinema approach. I mean, here's a woman in the movie that is being defined by everybody else she has relationships with. and she has to decide in the course of the movie who she is. And she finally, in realizing the plight of the scrolls, what's really going on with the scrolls, she stands up and does what's right. And she's like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of listening to everybody manipulate me and tell me what to do. And she stands up and does the right thing. I thought that was a really good story. Does it have the visceral punch of other Marvel movies? No, but it was a different kind of a story, and I liked it. And I don't apologize. I saw Captain Marvel 4 times in the theater. I liked it. You know, and yet all the online vitriol. Anyway, it's crazy. We live in a crazy world, people. We're surrounded by awesome stuff. There's awesome stuff wherever you look. Wherever you look. Check this out. Look at this. So I love Space 1999. I've always loved Space 1999. And as a kid, one of the greatest things you could have when you were a kid growing up was an Eagle transporter from Space 1999. Look at this. This is a 20th anniversary Breakaway, because Breakaway happened in September 13th, 1999. Special signature edition. This is number 176 out of 300. Only limited edition worldwide. Individually hand-signed by SFX director and Eagle designer Brian Johnson. Look at this. Look at this. It comes in like a velvet box. Here's a die-cast Eagle transporter. And actually, I'll show you. Because this thing is so goofy. It's goofy, but it's great. So as I get this out, here is Brian Johnson, who is the visual effects director for The Empire Strikes Back. He created the Eagles. He signed this. One of 300. I love Eagles. I've loved the Eagles since I was a little kid. I have this. It's very goofy that this exists at all. It's goofy, but I have it, and it's cool. As you can see, if you look up there, I don't know if you can see it. Let me check the screen. Yeah, you can see there is a 22-inch 148 scale Eagle. I got a model of an Eagle here. I got Eagles coming out my ears. I love Eagles, but now I have one that's signed by Brian Johnson, who created them. The creator of the Eagle signed a die-cast Eagle, and I have one. Don't we live in a great world? And with that, I will say we do live in a great world, and that means I'm going to bring this chat to a close. So thank you. This is the end of Robservations, episode number 249. Thank you for being here. Remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. I will be back on the John Campea Show tomorrow, and I will be here tomorrow for the 250th episode of Robservations, the show about something. I don't know. It's crazy. It's amazing. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for being here. And as always, have a better day.